Our first speaker is Keith Huneycutt, professor of English at Florida Southern College. Earned his PhD in English from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. I was just there last weekend. That was a nice library. Since 1987, he has taught courses at Florida Southern in European, British, and American literature. A former president of the Florida College English Association, he was awarded that organization's Distinguished Colleague Award in 2011, and he currently serves as on the Board of Trustees for the MKR Society. His publications include, his publications include articles on Florida history, culture, and 2 books co-authored with James Denham, also known as Mike. Echoes from a Distant Frontier, the Brown Sisters Correspondence from Antebellum, Florida, from 2004, and Letters of George Long Brown from 2019. His most recent book is an edition of Ellen Brown's Anderson's The Storm, and he will talk about that today. Please welcome Keith.
All right, I've got the timer. I'll run over just a point and I'll leave. Okay, so this is the book I'm going to talk about today. This has nothing to do with Marjorie Kinnan Rawlings, unfortunately. But I think that there is a connection because Ellen is somebody who migrated to Florida and found that the Florida setting was something she wanted to write about. It took her a while to come to that conclusion, and it took Marjorie a while to come to that conclusion also. But I do think she found her setting here. This book has a lot of mystery around it, the manuscript. This is the manuscript. It's unsigned, it's undated. It was donated to the library at UF in 2015. I found out about it in 2016. Jim Cusick, who works with, well, I guess you sort of work together. You're 50 feet away.
Him, yeah.
Okay, all right. So he contacted me and Mike Denham because he knew that we had worked with the Brown sisters, and he suspected that this might be by one or both of them. And so Mike wasn't interested. And I said, well, I'm interested. I'll be back. And so I got to taking a closer look and decided, yeah, this is definitely Ellen's story. I'll tell you a little bit about the Brown family. If any of you remember way back in 2016, I think we were meeting in Jacksonville, and I talked about their letters, and one of the things that I mentioned was how frustrating it was to read their letters and discover that they wanted to be authors and had trouble getting their work published. I have since then found one story that each sister had one story published, and then there's this manuscript that Ellen, I think, would have had published if she had lived longer. And we can talk about that if we have time. I don't know if we will. Anyway, this is Ellen. This is a 45-minute presentation, but you're getting the 18-minute version. Okay, so this is Ellen Brown. She and her sister Corinna moved to Florida in 1835 to Mandarin, just down the river a little bit. I have Corinna here because she might have helped Ellen in the early stages. Not certain. They collaborated on other things earlier, but at this point, Corinna wasn't writing much. She had very bad health. She had sort of given up on publishing because of various bad experiences, but Ellen was still going at it. This is their brother, Manivalette. He's here because he saved all of their letters, and that's how we know about them. And he collaborated with them, and he was a professional artist and did the illustrations, I'm pretty sure, for this story. You can't see this. I'll tell you very quickly what I can. 1835, Corinna got married in 1837. Ellen got married in 1847. Ellen had 3 kids. Her husband was killed in 1847. She was left with 3 kids. She moved with her sister and her sister's husband to Key West, which is a key part of this story. And then they all moved back in 1850, except for Edward, who stayed out in California for the gold rush. Okay, these are some of the places where they lived. Of course, Mandarin down the river. And then, again, the key point is Key West, 1849 to 1850. This is a Key West story, and that's an important part of the evidence that Ellen, and maybe with Corinna's help, wrote it. Whoever wrote it was actually there and saw it and knew what was going on. This is one of the earliest daguerreotypes or early photographs of Florida. Key West in 1849. That's when they were there. It would have looked like this. It was reconstructed. If this stuff looks shoddy, it's because the hurricane that's in this story in 1846 wiped out Key West. And so this stuff is all rebuilt in 3 years. That's probably the Episcopal Church where they went. All right, so these are some of the other things, the letters they wrote. They collaborated on a novel, didn't get published. They kept writing stories. They started a novel in 1836. They didn't get it finished because they had to take care of sick relatives, which is sort of how it was for women back then. If somebody was sick, they stopped what they were.
Thank you. You're on the camera, man.
Okay, you just stand here just to hold me. This is going to work. Okay. So, all right.
You're making
18
my
minutes.
dreams come true.
Okay. Mine too close. Okay, so this is Corinna's story in 1837. I finally found that one. It's at an obscure museum in New York City. They both sent essays to the Florida magazine, which was going to be published in Jacksonville, and the magazine was never published, so the essays were never published. Corinna gave up, but in 1850, Ellen published a story called A Novel in a Nutshell in the Knickerbocker, which is a pretty respectable magazine where people like Washington Irving published, and so she was very happy about that. It was unsigned. It was by the Condensationalist. It was a pseudonym, but I have a copy of the letter where Corinna tells Manivellette that it's going to be published in the next edition. So it's hers, and it's also in the back of this book. So Ellen tried her best to have a career as a journalist. She wanted to support her family that way. She had promises from people. She gave trial articles, and she just didn't get paid. She was worked over in a number of ways. Very frustrating for her. Finally, she had some success 150 years later. So they lived. Wait, where were you, Flo? Okay, so dating this. It couldn't have been written before they got to Key West, right? It could not have been written before the late 1840s because a big part of the plot is that 1846 storm. They did not witness it. They read articles about it and talked to other survivors of the hurricane that they would have known. And they mentioned it in their letters, the evidence of the storm. So many things are still flat. In 1853, a guy, George William Curtis, published a book called The Potiphar Papers, and the storm mentions Mrs. Potiphar. So it could not have been finished before that came out. And I'm assuming that since Ellen was back in New York, she could have gotten it immediately, maybe a year or two later. So somewhere in the mid-1850s, most likely. Corinna, and this is why I'm pretty sure Corinna was not working on it. Corinna had very bad health problems, including her addiction to morphine, and she was a severe alcoholic. And she was committed to an institution in New York City, the Bloomingdale Insane Asylum. Very sad story, very, very sad story. She was not in condition to be writing, and she didn't write anymore at that time. And it could not have been done after 1862 when Ellen died from breast cancer. And this is one reason why I think it was not published. It was, the manuscript is in good shape, ready to go to the printer, but her health was so bad, her resources were so diminished that she just couldn't pull it off. She was more concerned about what would happen to her daughters after she was dead, and she made arrangements with her brother to pick them up. It's a sad story. Okay, so the letter, let me back up. Her daughter inherited all of her manuscripts, and the storm, the letters, and everything. When Villette died in 1891, the family papers went to her brother, Edward, who lived in Washington, D.C. He stored the letters and the manuscripts in a box in his house until 1972. Several generations lived in that house. And in 1972, under questionable circumstances, John Traynor, sort of related to the family, took those letters to the University of Florida to sell them to the library. The library they did keep them in a vault and look at them for a while, but they would not pay whatever price he was asking. And so a lawyer friend, Norman LeCaux, who's also an amateur historian in Alachua County, helped him arrange to have the letters sold to collectors. He gave Norm, and I call him Norm because I met him and knew him, the manuscript for The Storm. Norm sold The Storm to a bookseller in Micanopy. Some of you might have been to that bookstore years ago. Yeah, Mr. Brisky. Yeah, he had this sitting there for ages. And then Gary Nitz, who took over the bookstore, donated it to UF in 2015. That's how it got there. Okay, so what's it about? It's set in 1846. A massive hurricane also leveled parts of Havana, killed at least 60 people in Key West, which was a pretty heavily populated place. It was boomtown at that time, the most populated city in Florida back then. Very busy place. Okay, so this is, it's told from the perspective of Jenny Mansfield, first person narrator, and she's looking back on her time when she was a 16-year-old bride who was perfectly legal, but now I think they're moving it back, aren't they? 16 and from New York to Key West because that was a get-rich-quick kind of place. Lots of weather metaphors. This is just sort of a loose description, but there is a hurricane there, and it does change her life. So it's not just for the sensationalism, though it's very sensational. And one important thing about it is that the narrator complains about her situation, the limited education for women. She says, why am I not able to do anything? I'm just here. I am nothing but a wife, and my husband is out doing things, and I'm stuck in the house. Nobody else at that time, at least not in Florida, was talking like that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong. She talks about the restrictions of society. She talks about many things that also appear in Ellen's letters. It's Ellen's voice. I actually recognize it. It fits in a number of categories, genres of literature for antebellum America. Travel literature, there's steamboat rides, there's ships, there's all sorts of stuff there. Manifest Destiny wasn't only to the west, it sometimes went north, sometimes it went down to Florida all the way to Key West. And women also wrote about where they went. Sentimental lit. Short version of that is It was a term invented by male critics to denigrate the writings of women, basically. And now it's a distinguished category because we see that this is part of life that was not written about by Washington Irving, for instance. Human connections and emotions, feelings, morals, values, and so forth. Or the women did it better. Ellen did it better than Washington. A Bildungsroman, coming-of-age story. She's 16, but by the time the story is over, she has learned a lot and she has grown up. It's also a novel of awakening where the female protagonist casts off patriarchal domination. And this is in the 1850s. They were doing it up north, but they weren't casting much in Florida. This is one of the very first works of Florida fiction by a woman who actually lived in Florida. Most of the people writing about Florida in the 1850s and earlier didn't even come here, much less live here. They were just passing around rumors about pirates and so forth. Lots of pirate stories and lots of very bad indigenous person stories also. This is the first-person female narrator and protagonist in Florida literature. The first story, and I've really looked hard for one, and I can't find another one that has this depiction of domestic life. So when she's talking about Key West, she's not talking just about the ships and the explorers and the trade and all that. She's talking about how people lived there in the city at the time. And this is the first story in Florida that focuses on women's education and on their marital roles. Okay, and Key West, if any of you are Key West fiction fans, boy, is that a tradition. Well, Ellen belongs at the beginning of that tradition. This is the first full depiction of Key West in fiction by anybody. Okay, this is the first Key West story written by a woman and from a woman's perspective, and it is the only depiction of wreckers in Key West from a domestic perspective in the entire 19th century. Again, prove me wrong. This is what wreckers look like, the smaller boats. This is the boat that's stuck on the reef here. It's a booming industry until, navigation was invented. Okay, so the manuscript also has some illustrations. I love this one. This is Jenny in her mosquito tent in Key West, a necessary accessory for Key West. And I'm pretty sure that her brother, Manipulette, is the artist, because that looks like a bee, and Manipulette Brown, and he was a real pro. He worked with Currier and Ives, and he was all over Europe doing masterworks and copying masterworks and stuff. He was very good. So I'm pretty sure this is his, and he would have been free. And Ellen couldn't afford an artist. He did this one also. This is looking out the front porch from Jenny's house in Key West, a very fine house. Yeah, and this is, you have to read the book to see how this happened, but this is Jenny floating in the water. Okay, and this is what Ellen would have looked like in the 1850s. I got this image from The Family. She's in her widow's weeds, as they say. And then I have time maybe to read this one. You can read along if you can see it, one or two of these passages. This is I'm going to do my very best Jenny voice from the narrator, looking back at the house that we just saw, or we saw the porch. The pillars of the piazza made a framework through which I looked. There was the great ocean stretching far away from eastern to western horizon, interrupted only by a low white bank or quay, which I take to be the original Spanish word for these peculiar islands. All along this expanse of water floated vessels of all nations, builds, and sizes. 2 or 3 were always in sight. One, perhaps in such a position that her sails were white with the reflected light of the moon, while of another the sails were all in shadow. Imagine these seen through openings of dark outline of the foliage, the moonlit seas, the glancing sails in the distance, the white pillars to frame them in, and you have the panorama to which I had a perpetual ticket of admission. And this is the very scene that she just described. And a little different passage with some social commentary. In Key West, there were only rich folks, and I can spend as much money as you was the open boast. Poor Mrs. Potiphar would have gone mad among them. There was sudden wealth in unaccustomed hands without any leading example to imitate. When an ignorant, low-bred man becomes wealthy, he boasts and blusters and imitates his neighbors in building fine houses, gambling or drinking, as his particular idiosyncrasy may lead him. An ignorant, low-bred woman has no such range of choice. Her one idea of wealth is dress. When men envy one another, they pick a quarrel and fight it out. When women envy one another, they backbite and snarl and serve each other with little petty annoyances so long as they are within hail of each other's distance. Moreover, they do not like to lose sight of each other, for this feeling is strong as love and is often mistaken for it. I've seen two people who could not bear to separate, so great was their desire to quarrel. Who has not? Okay, and since I only have 17 more seconds, I won't read this passage, but this is one of the ones where Jenny is complaining about her educational and marital status. 16-year-old uneducated bride, and she's not very happy about that. Okay, so by the way, there is a copy of The Storm. See, I'm going to pinpoint it right there in the auction.
Oh, great.
So make your bid. And I have copies in the back that I will sell to you for what I paid for them.
Thank you, Pete.
Wonderful.
Okay?
Wow.
So,
Thank you.
do I have time for questions?
Yeah.
Okay, just stop me whenever you're ready for any questions? Yes.
How long was she in St. Augustine?
They were in St. Augustine for months at a time. Her husband was in the army, and so and they were chasing Seminoles. And so they moved all over Florida, but they would go back to St. Augustine for safety because it was a settled place. It was safe, they thought, relatively safe. And so I can't say how long they were there all together, but they would go for months back and forth whenever they thought that it was too dangerous for them to be, like in Noonan'sville or somewhere inland. So if you read, see this book, she has a lot of letters written from both sisters from St. Augustine, and they even describe Osceola when they saw him there at the fort. So they were there quite a bit. Sorry, I can't give you more precise.
That's perfect, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Anything about Cubans in Key West or Havana?
She talks about the huge mix, the variety of people that they meet there. And yeah, Cubans are there, Bahamians are there, people from everywhere are there at Key West at that time. It was really a diverse place in a lot of ways. And the sisters themselves, in their letters, when they got there, they talked about immediately they started taking Spanish lessons. They started studying Spanish so they could talk to the Cubans and other people that they couldn't speak Spanish to. So, yeah.
What made the family decide to come to Florida?
Well, Aunt Delia had a hat shop. Aunt Delia moved down, had a hat shop in St. Augustine, and she married a rich planter in Mandarin. James Hall is his name, and she invited everybody to come on down. Ellen and Corinna's mother died, and they sold the house up in Portsmouth, Maine, and everybody moved somewhere, and so they said, we'll move to Florida, and they came down to live with Aunt Delia. Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Any more questions?
It's a great story.
Yeah, cool story.
All right. Well, thank you very much then.
Thank you.